Hey, this is Jim McDonald. Welcome to episode 205, a very special Friday episode of the PowerCast. This is a Father's Day episode with Mark's dad, Mike. We talked about the course of his career and his growing up and what it was like raising Mark and his brothers. And he has some very solid financial advice for people who are starting businesses as well. And perhaps most importantly, he tells us what "I'd rather be dead than average" actually means to him. Anyway, enjoy this episode. We had Chris Bell drop in on the phone, which is something we haven't done in ages and never done exactly this way before, and we'll be doing more of in the future in perhaps even a better way. So like and share this episode, and we'll be back. Support for this episode of the PowerCast comes from 8-Man Apparel for people who lift heavy weights at 8manstrong.com. Compex Muscle Stim products at CompexUSA.com. Use the code PowerCast and get an additional 28% discount. HowMuchYouBench.net, home of Mark Bell's Slingshot. Bench heavy with no pain with Mark Bell's Slingshot. And Bodybuilding.com, the world's largest fitness website and supplement store. Bodybuilding.com has free plans for every level. Visit Bodybuilding.com today to become your best self.
Recorded live in West Sacramento, California, this is Mark Bell's PowerCast. Standing just to the left of Jim McDonald, here's your host, Mark Bell.
There we go. All right, well, today we have a special edition, a Friday edition of the PowerCast. And today's spatial is going to be about Father's Day and about fathers. And so we brought this little short guy in here who claims to be my dad. He's been claiming it for a long time, but I don't really know the real story behind it.
We never did get the DNA results.
Yeah, we never did. We never had him on Maury to kind of find out.
You are kind of a mutant compared to me.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, Chris is more like my size.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I got one of those too, because Sam is like right at 6'1", and I'm 5'8" on a low gravity day. So
maybe we should do a swab right after the podcast.
Dad, did you get the script? Jim should have emailed it over to you.
No, Jim, he never.
No, it never happens.
I'll probably get it tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah,
he's so irresponsible.
You know how
he's
email
always
is.
Day late, dollar short.
Yeah, you know how email works.
Yeah, that's terrible. Well, I don't know what we'll talk about then.
I have no idea. We'll just have to ad-lib something.
Oh, my God. It's going to be one of those shows again.
Yeah, it's going to be, your dad can just tell us about being your dad. And
Yeah, okay. A terrible experience that's been for him.
No, actually, it was pretty good. If you just want to talk about that kind of stuff, it's pretty easy. Mike was the first one to come along, and Mike used to cry a lot. We didn't find out that he was allergic to milk.
Too.
We didn't find out he was allergic to milk for a long time, and but that was kind of the allergy to milk was sort of a side note. I mean, because when a kid cries a lot, you pay a lot of attention to them.
Exactly.
You run to them, you pick them up, you hold them. But Mike always was the kind who demanded time, He always had these interests that you couldn't just talk to him and say this or that, He wanted to do everything, And so when he was about 6 years old and he wanted to get into t-ball, we started, and he always kind of dominated the scene, He was good at it, and then he went into Little League and stuff like that, and the things that Mike wanted to do were kind of things that directed family activities,
right.
And so Christopher came along.
He was always pretty good at everything, right? Even without a lot of practice, just kind of jumping in. He was just always pretty good at
a natural.
Yeah,
at things.
At most stuff.
Yeah, whatever it was that he did, and whatever he did at 110%. Whether it was dirt bike or whatever.
Right.
But anyway, going along that same line, the thing about him was. Whatever he did, he wanted to do so much of it that when Chris came along, we just put Chris in on the same team, and I became the coach so that I could control that, so we could have him on the same team, so we weren't running two different directions.
Got some great pictures of that stuff.
And so,
I'm sure.
So then Mark came along 4 years after Chris, and kind of went Mike was in the bigger league at that time, and we just kept going along those lines. And then I became his coach for a while. But getting back to being Mark's dad, Mike kind of directed the path that we followed in terms of extracurricular activities and things like that,
Kind of because he was a pain in the ass.
That's part of it, but it was also because he was good at it, and when your kids are good at something, you want to continue them along.
Right.
So Mark went into baseball, too. And the thing I can say about the three of them is Mike was always the kid, if you told him that we used to have a wood-burning stove. If you told him the stove was hot, he was the kid who had to go over and actually touch it.
Make sure.
And and get burned on it, Christopher,
that is hot. It did burn me. You're right.
Yeah.
How come you didn't say anything?
Christopher was the one who would go near it and feel the heat and back away. And Mark couldn't care less. He'd sit there on the floor playing with his toy, whatever he was doing. And if you told him it was hot or it was cold, he didn't even know if he heard you or not, But he was never. What I'm saying is, he was never a problem. He was the type of kid who was never a problem. And
you hear that,
people
Smokey?
used to.
I was a good kid.
People would take toys away from Mike,
good.
and he'd want to beat him up.
Yeah.
And Rosemary would be like, "No, you have to share. You have to share. You should share. Don't be like that. And he didn't want to share. But Chris, he would share. Mark, you come over and take a toy away from him, he'd just go find another toy. It was like no reaction whatsoever.
That's great.
He was very mellow.
Yeah, Mike
he
was smart too, though, because he would compare stuff. Like even at a young age, he would be like, "Well, you're not going to share your car with the neighbor."
Right.
And you're like, well, yeah, I guess not. I guess fuck the neighbor. I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to share my.
He always had the logical explanation for justifying his own thing.
Right. That makes sense.
Talk to us a little bit about your career path. Like when we were growing up and stuff, and kind of. Your first house and your first job and first things kind of coming out. What did you go to college for? Let's start there.
Okay, so I started out at a 2-year college. I wanted to be a plumber. In high school, I worked for a plumber, a large plumbing outfit, and they were doing apartment buildings and things like that. And I really enjoyed the work, but in football I injured my knee, and so I really couldn't squat down and bend very good, and always had troubles with my knees. And so when I went to my guidance counselor, they said, you should look at office work because when you're 50 years old, you may be able to do this for a while, but when you're 50 years old, you're not going to be able to do plumbing. So I didn't do that. I went, to college for accounting, and about the third or fourth week of that, I decided I hated accounting, but I couldn't tell my dad because he was paying the tuition. So I went for the 2 years and I finished. I went to Alfred State Technical College in Alfred, New York, and I graduated 2 years later with an accounting degree, and I hated it. So my first job was as a purchasing agent for Georgia Pacific, and Rosemary and I were dating at the time, and she wanted to get married, and so did I. So we set a wedding date. But I decided that I needed to really go on further, so I started going to Pace University to finish a 4-year degree there. And I was doing that evenings, and while I was doing that, I moved from Georgia Pacific to a company called Standard Coated. They were making wallpaper, so I was a cost accountant there. And I didn't like accounting, so I was always looking for another job, but it paid more, so I went there. And so after that, I landed with IBM, which is where I really wanted to be. And I worked for IBM 19 years. And during that time, I always had a part-time business. I used to do home remodeling and interior decorating type stuff, things like that. Not the decorating itself, but doing the wallpaper and the painting and things like that. I had Rosemary's 2 brothers working for me while they were growing up. And then Rosemary said, hey, between your job and your extra job that you're doing, the boys don't really know you. You're never home, So I gave that up. So I gave that up so that I could spend time with them, and that's when I got into coaching Little League. So then my career with IBM lasted 19 years, and during that time, I always had the drive to do something because my father was in business for himself, and my father had a used car lot and an auto repair business. He used to buy cars wholesale, fix them up, and sell them for a profit. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess we would be considered the rich people in the neighborhood, but we never actually knew we were rich, just like poor kids growing up never know that they're poor.
Right.
Really, they don't understand that until they get older. So my dad had a boat and an airplane, and nobody else had that. I remember we were the first ones to have color TV and stuff like that. And the reason I'm talking about that is that put a spirit of entrepreneurialism in my veins, and I decided that
he was a hustler. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He would just figure out a way to make money. Period.
Yeah, and so I got what we were doing is we decided to flip raw property. What we were doing is we were buying lots at the time, and we would do the engineering on the lots, which was the perk test for the septic and the get the average depth of wells in the area and do the engineering work ourselves. It was really easy. You could just find out from the county clerk's office how to do the engineering work. So we flipped a couple of properties. And the reason that I got into that was by then Mike was ready to go off to college, and we needed money for tuition. So the first lot I flipped was $15,000 profit, and his first year in school was $15,000. So it was always like it always worked out that way. There was never like a lot of extra money around, but there was always money around to do things. And then Chris came along, and he ended up with a scholarship to USC, so that was a big relief. But I started a part-time real estate business, and when everything was going good, that's when you have to be careful. And I wasn't expecting anything, but IBM decided to lay off 10,000 people in Hudson Valley, so I was part of that. So Rosemary said, "Why don't you go into business for yourself?" And I'm like, "Well, because I'm afraid I'll fall flat on my face." And she goes, "We are flat on our face. They just repossessed our car." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I had to borrow money from my dad to get it out of repo guy, right? So I started a tax practice, and I had worked a little bit for H&R Block after one Christmas where we didn't have money, going way back. We didn't have money. And I said, "I just put everything for the kids on credit cards. Don't worry about it. We'll figure out a way to make the money." So I went to work for H&R Block, and I think we charged up like $2,500 worth of stuff, and I went to H&R Block and made $2,500, paid off, right? But the knowledge I got from H&R Block was like, man, I don't want to split fees with them. I can do this.
Right.
And so I started my own business doing that. So when she said, "Hey, we're flat on our face, why don't you start something?" I took the last $325 I had in the bank, and I went and rented an office for 1 month, praying the whole month that the next month that came around I'd have the $325. We were already not paying our mortgage, so all we needed was the $325. And that went on for quite a while because when I left IBM, I figured I'll get another job easily, but I didn't. There was nobody was hiring at that time, and so we ended up like 8 months behind on our mortgage and all this,
Wow.
So you give people financial advice, people as high up the ladder as John Cena and stuff like that. Would you ever advise? You've given tons of advice over the years to people financially. Would you ever advise somebody take $325 of their last dollars to go rent an office building?
Yes, if it's along the lines of their passion, if it's something and I always loved numbers, and so I figured I should open a tax practice because I had a few clients that came over to me from H&R Block, because when they went to H&R Block, found out I wasn't there the following year, they looked up my number and came to me. So I knew I could produce a following, and so I started doing that out of the home. I made an office, and I took our garages in our house, and I turned it into offices. And
half office, half gym.
Yeah, right.
Oh, really? Right. Get there in a little bit.
Yeah, half office, half gym. And so we were working out of there, and eventually it got too big, and we ended up having to rent office space. But I don't regret following my passion at all because I've never made less than what I was making at IBM.
Oh.
There's months that go by where you don't make anything, but then there's months that go by that you make double or triple or 4 times what you would have made at your regular job. So everything evens out in the end. And
How long did it take you to recover that money? Did it just a year or two, or?
It took about 8 years to recover everything, because we ended up going through our retirement, 401k plan, stuff like that. We went through all those kind of things. And the advice I give people today is that if you lose your job, the first thing you want to stop paying is your mortgage. What people stop doing is they stop paying their credit cards. They stop going out and having fun. They stop doing life. And they're wanting to do the mortgage, and they want to pay the mortgage. They don't want to lose the house. And there's nothing worse than that kind of thinking, because if you have the credit card companies on your side, they don't care about the house. You can still get more credit and keep using your credit cards and keep paying your credit card bills. You can still live without money on credit cards.
So you can live day by day, even without paying for your house. It's nothing immediate is going to happen to you.
It takes them 3 months to realize that you're not paying your mortgage until you get the first letter, and then it takes them 3 years to foreclose on you. So you can basically live in your house for 3 years for free while you're recouping. And I found that out the hard way. Not knowing it. We were always trying to make that monthly payment every month, and then finally, the 1 month that we couldn't, it's like waiting for an execution. You're waiting, and as the clock ticks, it gets closer to the time. You have more and more anxiety. But once they put the bullet in your head, it's over, right? Well, once you miss that payment, that first payment, and the phone doesn't ring because they don't really realize that you missed it, it's like, wow.
There's no bullets in the chamber.
Yeah.
Right. There's no bullets in the chamber. I get to live another day, another month, another month, another month, And so I tell people all the time, don't worry about the house, because here's the thing. If you buy a house that's $400,000 and you put down 20%, which is $80,000, you only have $80,000 into it. You're not really holding on to a $400,000 house. You're holding on to a $320,000 mortgage.
Right.
And that's the problem. You're trying to save your house, I ask them? No, you're trying to save your mortgage payment. Why would you want to save your mortgage payment? Let it go. Because if you keep your other credit intact, you'll always be able to get another house.
Oh, that makes sense. I hadn't really thought about it that way before. And you're basically you're taking advantage of the inefficiency in their system.
The inefficiency and the legalities, because let's say that you consider the person who doesn't pay their mortgage a deadbeat, or the assailant. Okay, the bank is actually the victim. Okay, and there's no laws to protect victims. Laws always protect the what do you call it? The predator.
Yeah.
Okay, and so by not paying your mortgage, if you've put yourself in the predator position, all the laws protect you, because when you buy a house, you have a bundle of rights, and the bank has to go through that entire bundle of rights and undo all that in order to take it away from you, and it costs them about $40,000 or $50,000 to hire attorneys to do that. So they lay off on that for a while, hoping that you'll catch up by this fact that they send you nasty letters, and so the whole effort in trying to collect from you is put on them, and there's no satisfaction for them. The only satisfaction is they end up owning the house, but
then
now they have to sell
it.
They have to market it, and so they lose even more money because they have to pay 6% commission.
People listening to this right now, they're like trying to have a conversation with their wife about not paying the mortgage. It's not going over so well.
If you're going through a rough time, the first thing to stop paying is your mortgage. This is the only country in the world, where they will never put you in debtor's prison because they know you can never pay your debts if you're not working.
Yeah.
And we don't have debtor's prison, and you can continue with your life. I remember during that time, the 3 boys were in college, and I said to Rosemary, "What do we do? We have to pay the tuition and stuff like that. We're going to disrupt their lives, bring them home, have them go flip hamburgers for minimum wage. They're not going to contribute to the family. They're not going to contribute to the mortgage. They're going to go out with their girlfriends. They're going to be putting gas in their car. They're going to be buying alcohol or whatever. They're anything that they can do. They're going to go to the movies. Anything that they can do with the money that they earned, which they consider their money, they're not going to put towards our mortgage. So leave them in school. Let's take loans. Let's do whatever we have to do, because the loans, you can put those payments off until years after they're out of college, and things like that. So you continue your life. You don't disrupt anybody. You don't pull kids out of college. You don't have them work and end up hating the family and the family effort for the fact of saving the house. And you're not saving a house. You're saving a mortgage. That's what you're saving. You're saving the right to pay your mortgage the following month. That doesn't make any sense unless you're in good financial condition.
Makes sense to me. I never really thought about it that way before.
How much money did you make when you with your first job? And then how
Okay, my first job out of college was with Georgia Pacific, and it was $8,000 a year. And I was so happy to get that job. And I worked for Georgia Pacific for about 2 years.
$8,000 a year, Smokey.
Yeah. Everybody here take note of that.
Yeah, you still have to have some cutbacks over there, buddy.
So that was good. And when they hired me, they said, can you guys get by on that? And I'm like, well, sure, And my mortgage, my rent at the time, we had a 2-bedroom apartment. No, it was a 1-bedroom apartment, and the rent was only $100 a month. And I'm talking 1972, okay? Or no, I'm sorry, 1970. So then I went to the wallpaper company, Standard Coated, and that was a lateral move. I just went there because Georgia Pacific, it was a sheetrock plant, and they weren't doing well. And there was talk about the plant shutting down, so I looked for another job. So I took a lateral move over to this wallpaper company, and that was about $9,000 a month. $9,000 a year. It wasn't that much more money, but it wasn't less. And I hated that job. And that was cost accounting, and like I said, I hated accounting. At Georgia Pacific, I was a purchasing agent. And so I ended up, the whole time I was at that job, looking for another job. So I went to IBM. And when I went to IBM, I interviewed with them 6 times. And that was once a year. And then I started going twice a year just to keep bugging them for employment. And one day my brother called me and he said, hey, I just found out they're hiring in accounting. I made like I was sick at my job. I said, I got to go home. I'm sick, right? I went down to IBM. I went on that interview, and they hired me on the spot for $12,000 a year. I remember I couldn't wait to get home. I pulled over to a phone booth and called Rosemary, and I said, we just hit the lottery. I said, I got a job, $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. It's like I died and went to heaven. And she was so thrilled. No, did you get the job with IBM? I'm like, yeah, I did, And so we were so happy. And, You
can't even use a phone booth anymore.
I know, you can't even use the phone. And you can't use $12,000 either anymore.
That's not going to do a whole lot.
It doesn't do a whole lot,
Nope.
And so the thing is, when I left IBM, I was making $72,000 a year. That's fast forward 19 years, $72,000 a year, and we were living pretty comfortably.
Like late 80s, maybe, right?
Late 80s. We had a nice big house. Oh, actually, it was 1992. We had a nice big house. We had a pool. We had all that stuff, and all the kids would come to their friends would come to our house. We used to have spaghetti dinners for the football team because at that time we used to have to carb up the night before the game and all that kind of thing. So we had bread and spaghetti for all the football players and stuff like that.
Thinking it's speeding us up, but probably slowing us down more than anything.
Probably so.
And so we were doing that kind of thing, and so when I went into business for myself, the first 4 or 5 months was tough, but I never have had a year where I made less than I was making at IBM. Even my first year, we were well over the 72,000. And I remember the biggest year I ever had doing my own business and real estate and no IBM income was about $425,000, and real estate was hot at the time. And I was also working for someone else. I was a salesperson for another company, so I was splitting commissions with them. So I had the same feeling I had when I was working at H&R Block. I'm not splitting commissions with anybody anymore.
Right.
I'm going to become a broker. So I went back to classes at Dutchess Community College and took the brokerage classes and got my own brokerage license. So we opened Mike Bell Realty.
I don't remember how old I was, but I remember kind of like figuring out like that he does taxes for kind of like everybody he knows, including like his close friends and family. And I just remember, I think I asked him one day, I just looked at him, I was like, you make money off everybody you know? And then he would go over it with me at the end of each day, and he would show me like the checks and stuff that he had, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I made 110 with this and 120 with that." And like as a kid, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like he's made like $500 in a day or 1,000, whatever the day brought in, and I was like baffled by it. I was like, "How's that possible? That's pretty cool."
So then he was taking some kind of class in school or something like that. And one day he comes home and he asked me what stock is, And I said, stock is when a person buys a stock in a company. They buy a share, a piece of paper in a company. And if the company's doing good, they get paid dividends, which is like interest. Or the stock price will demand a higher price and the stock goes up. So if you buy a stock for $100, it goes up to $150 and you sell it, you get $150. So you made a $50 profit. And he's like, "Can I buy stock in you?" Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And so I said, "How much do you have?" And he said, $10. So he'd give me $10 and he'd ask me all the time, "Well, when do I get my $10 back?" And I said, "When something happens, I said, we have to sell a house or we have to do a tax or something has to happen, right? And so I would sell a house and I would come home and I'd say, "Hey, I sold a house. Your $10 is now $15." And he'd go, "Can I buy more stock?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I'd take it back. And we did that a few times, and then
awesome.
it just it was a fun thing. And it just kind of ended. I don't know how it ended. Oh, he probably just spent his money.
Probably bought a video game or something at the end of it.
Yeah, he probably had about $70 and went out and blew the whole thing.
That is probably what happened. So like in our basement, growing up, there was an office in one spot, and then on the other side, it was a basement, not a garage.
Well, here's the thing. It was a large colonial home with a full basement, and when you pulled into the house, you pulled in the driveway. The first part of the basement was a 2-car garage.
Oh, that's right.
And then the rest of it was just all storage. So the rest of the area where it was storage, I put up a wall and a door, and so it made it into 2 rooms, okay? And I put my office in the first room. So I would leave my garage door open. I would just say to people that would come to the house to get their taxes done, just come through the garage, and there's a sign on the first door that says office, and you just walk into the office, I'll do your taxes. And then these guys got the idea of the other room where we had our storage, that they wanted to turn that into a gym. And so we piled all the stuff up in one corner and made the rest of it, which is about maybe 20 by 10 or 20 by 15, about 300 square feet. And they had this huge,
good amount of room,
Yeah.
They had a bench and this huge big monstrosity of a
squat rack, basically.
Yeah, it looked like a big, huge erector set to me, And I'm like, "What's that thing?" And he says, "A squat rack." And what do you do with it? And all they do is squats with it. And I'm like, that big thing is kind of ridiculous.
It's a bigger piece of equipment for one activity, right?
For one activity, yeah, So that's how that all started. Yeah, and I think it was Mike's idea, or Mike and Chris, because one year for Christmas, it shows it in the movie, they didn't want bikes or anything like that. They wanted the Hulkamania workout set, which is weights and a jump rope or something like that.
Yeah, that started pretty young, and then Mike had a thing from Sears, which probably wasn't all that expensive, but it was called the Marcy Monster. And you could do like lat pull downs on it. I think you'd bench on the other side.
It was plate loaded.
Leg extension. You might be able to even find it. Like, it was a Sears. I don't think it was. It was. It had a weight stack on it, and you could do a bunch of different exercises on it. Mike was into weights already.
Oh, Marcy still makes a lot of stuff, doesn't they? Let me go images.
Anyway, it looked like a Bowflex type of deal almost, but different.
I remember what you're talking about.
Different style of technology. It was anyway. Some people that will remember, what it looked like. But Mike kind of started out with that, and I think that might have been even in a different house.
It probably was.
But then,
like this one.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that might have been something that we had, but we had like a machine of some sort too, I thought. But
then I remember one day they came to me and they said they wanted free weights, and I'm like, "What are free weights?"
Yeah, that was going to be the question I have for you.
And they cost money.
Well, free. Yeah, free. Yeah, for nothing free.
What do you mean free weights?
That was going to be the next question I was going to ask you is, so Chris had the bad knees and stuff like that, and we went to Dr. Starace, and Dr. Starace told us about powerlifting and all that. And then how did you know what to buy from there? Because we did have, I think it's that. There you go, Jim.
This one right here?
Something like that. Yeah, home gym type deal.
Yeah. So here's how. Mike was telling me free weights. And I'm like, what are free weights? He goes, okay. They don't have a hole this big in them. They have a hole that's this big in them. So that's how I figured out what free weights were.
Oh, yeah, because we had the different weights.
You had the
smaller hole.
The hole, yeah. That's the only difference I knew.
Yeah, so we go on a regular sleeve as opposed to
we had those skinny little bar. We had a skinny little bar that we do like curls and shoulder presses and stuff with. But we didn't have.
Because I bought more weights. He said, we need more weight and we need free weights. So I went out and bought more weight, and he goes, that's the wrong stuff. That's the wrong stuff. Take it back. We need free weights. And I'm like, well, I don't get it. What's free? And he said,
because all you can use is 10s on that.
Right.
I don't think they make bigger ones that are have that small hole on them.
So he says, no, they don't have the small hole. They have a big hole in the middle. So I went to the place and I said, do you have any weights with the big hole? And they're like, yeah. Oh, yeah, we have those. Those are called free weights.
Yeah, we had a good setup, though. We had a bench, we had a squat rack, we had, and we were always blaring our music except for when you had clients.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we just had a little tape player type deal, play music and
little boombox kind of thing.
Yeah, get after it and lift some heavy stuff. But we had a good combination of stuff, and it was 300 square feet was like all we needed. It was perfect.
And I never went down there to lift.
except for to rescue me that one time. I got pinned under like 205 or something like that. I was doing like a drop set, and I was super young too. It was like 205 or maybe 185 or something like that. And I tried to dink it off each side. So I was lifting without the collars on. My brother showed me that. Just you lift without the collars. And if you get stuck, you let it roll to one side, let it roll to the other. Well, I rolled it to one side, and the weight hit the ground, and I couldn't get out from underneath the weight. And so I had to scream for help, and he came down, and the weight was like literally like almost on my throat at that point. So I was trying to figure out a way to push it up towards my head, which was probably the worst thing. I should have probably pushed it down towards my wiener.
Your belly, yeah.
And it was just
one of your squishier parts.
That was the most weight he's ever lifted, I think.
Yeah,
and probably the fastest,
and probably the last time.
Yeah,
yeah. He was like, "That's enough lifting for me."
I just never had an interest in it because when I was in wrestling in high school, I was always in the weight room, and my muscles never got any bigger. I don't know if I didn't have enough testosterone or what was going on, but my arms never got big. My dad had big arms. He was a boxer, and he had big arms, and he never did weights either. But he was always running and holding up the gloves, and so his biceps got really. I was looking for big biceps. My biceps never got any bigger. So I don't know what that was about.
So you got 3 kids, and none of them have any desire to get into a suit and work every day. Why do you think that happened? Since you were doing that in front of us every single day.
That's the biggest question. I'll tell you, my dad had the used car lot, and my brother and I were really, really interested in that. But my dad would bring all the problems from that into the house, like
he'd be frustrated from that.
Broke off a spark plug or misthreaded a head bolt or something like that, and we were forcing it in.
He did it in the driveway.
Yeah.
So it makes sense he'd bring it home. Yeah. He was home.
Oh yeah, but I mean, he would always be like, "Geez, they stripped a bolt or they broke a bolt off in a head, and now I gotta drill it out and re-tap the hole and everything." And we always made more work for him.
Right.
And he was trying to teach us stuff and show us stuff. And then he would let us try to do the job by ourselves. And every time we tried to do a job by ourselves, we always broke something on the car that would end up costing him money and time, and calling the client and saying the car's not going to be done for another week, or something like that. And so he would always bring it up, and we were like, we'd love to go into business with him. He was making good money. Mm-hmm. We could have blown that thing sky high, my brother and I, because we loved it so much. But we just couldn't wait to get out of the house and get away from it. He was a good father and everything, He was never an abuser, never an alcoholic or anything like that. But he would just carry on and on about things that happened. And so we didn't go into that business.
Yeah,
he complained about everything. So we never went into that business. So now I'm trying to relate what happened with them. I think they used to go in the airplane with my dad and things like that.
That was amazing.
And they used to see every time they went down to his house, there'd be different cars on the used car lot and everything, there'd be different cars. So I don't know if they picked that up. But when I went into business for myself, they were college age, end of high school and beginning of college. And I was doing pretty well, but they never had an interest in what I was doing. So I didn't think it was ever going to be a family business or anything like that. But they never wanted to do traditional employment. And I don't get it, because Mike only had like 1 or 2 jobs in high school. He worked at a deli, sweeping and cleaning up for a while.
That deli was good. I remember that deli.
Yeah, and he quit that job, and they never worked at McDonald's or any of those kind of places. Did you ever have a job?
No.
he never had a job.
I had a job at Marshall's for about a week, and it didn't go much longer.
Didn't
than
work
that.
out.
I was probably 17 or something like that, and I remember telling them that I can work any day they want, but I just can't work on Saturday. Saturday's when we had football, and they wanted me to work on a Saturday at like 4. We had a football game at like 12, and I was like, fuck them, I'm not even going to show up, And so I got a phone call, and the lady said, hey, you know what, like, if you don't want to show up, that's fine if we had miscommunication, but you can't not tell people. Like, you have to, it's just the way, like, business works. Let somebody know that you're not going to make it, and I was like, okay, well, whatever. So I had that job for about a week, and it just it didn't work. I don't think I'm designed to be able to handle that for whatever reason.
I had kind of the opposite experience with my dad, because my dad was a mechanic, and he just I could learn stuff.
Fixed like tractors and stuff like that,
he
right?
was an ag mechanic for
that's
for
pretty
a long
cool.
time. And then toward the end of his career, he was he worked on setting up the basically MASH units for the Navy. They get all of this equipment, and they would package it all up together, sort of put it into storage, and then when things would happen in different parts of the world, they would then transport the whole thing wherever and deploy it there. And then,
you ever been to the Tractor Museum in Woodland? You ever been there?
I have not been to the Tractor
Museum.
Museum.
You got to go.
Yeah, it's great.
I should go. Yeah,
we should all go.
Yeah, we should. It's super cool.
My dad actually worked in Woodland a fair amount during tomato season, because
there's tons of machines there.
There's the harvester company. I can't remember what.
There's some big ones, that's for sure.
I think it doesn't exist anymore. But he used to do like field modifications on their machinery. When he would find that something about a design didn't work under load,
right,
and he would have to make some kind of modification. And I went to work with him a lot. We rebuilt a couple of car engines at home. An engine would blow, whatever. One of my cars did that at some point. But he's like, never follow me into this, because the kind of job that he had, he was always working for somebody else. There really wasn't a good opportunity to do it as an individual unless you were going to move into auto. He didn't like auto as much as he liked being out in the fields and being in the car a lot was it's crazy, because you have to go from farm to farm to farm, but he actually liked the independence of that.
Yeah.
But he said, you're always going to work for somebody else that way, and it's always going to be dirty, and it's always going to be nasty long hours and stuff. He's like, I want you to do something else. It's like, okay, I get it, but I couldn't hack for the long haul being in an office either. Not that I spend any time in a field at this point, but
I always encourage them, education-wise, to get an education. And when Mike quit school, when Mike quit college to go to WWE, we were really upset with that. He quit college, he comes home, and he goes, I'm not going back, and you can't make me. And I'm like, yeah, I know we can't make you, but why would you throw your future away? You've got a great opportunity here to get a college degree. And he said, I'm not interested in school. I'm interested in sports, and I'm interested in football. And he injured his knee in football and went down to the second team or the third team, and he hated that. He couldn't handle that because he was always kind of on top in high school. So he quit school, and he said, don't worry about it. I'm going to be – I said, I am worried about it. You're not going to sit around here playing video games. Join the service, get a job, get an apartment, do whatever you got to do, but, you got to figure out a career now. You're not a baby anymore, And he was 18. He goes, Dad, I'm going to be on TV in 2 weeks. And about a month later. He was on TV every night, every Monday night in the 90s, from 1990 to 2001 or 2002. He was on TV all the time, WWE, you know?
The original Monday Night Raw, I think some of the Monday Night Raw that we went to at the Manhattan Center, some crazy wrestling fans might correct me, but I think it was Manhattan Center, and it was the start of Monday Night Raw. Now Monday Night Raw is
huge,
one of the most
gigantic,
one of the most successful TV shows in the history of America. It's seen in over 30 countries, and it started at the Manhattan Center in New York City, in front of a crowd of 3,000 people, maybe. Remember that? Remember when we went there?
I do remember that. Yeah.
And I remember we would see like Yokozuna and Doink the Clown and Macho Man and all those different people wrestling. And Mike had the opportunity to wrestle some of the big stars, Bret Hart, Undertaker, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, I never really. I always encouraged them education-wise, but I never even Mark was having trouble, even in high school. You know, I always helped him with his homework. And when he was in college, he was having trouble too. And I went up to the college. It was about 80 miles. And I remember like maybe at least once a month on a Friday night or Thursday night, I'd go up and help him with his homework in school and stuff like that. So I was always encouraging him that way. But I never encouraged him to work for a certain company or work in a certain career or anything like that. And the reason they never had jobs, and when I laughed about it because I always had a job, because even when I did play sports, I had a job because I just fit it in. I wanted money, you know. And my dad was like a hard worker, and he said, "I work hard for my money," and we saw that. And he said, "So I don't just give it away, you know. If you want money, go work for it." So we did. I mean, my brother. And my brother played more football than I did, but he had a job as well in A&P or one of those stores stacking shelves, things like that. And we had cars. We had to pay for our own insurance. We had to buy a car from him off of his lot because it was the cheapest place to buy it. But he didn't give us a car. We had to buy it. Yeah. And that's where I learned about making money off of family. So anyway, that's why I did everybody's taxes and charged them. But anyway, getting back to it, I never encouraged them one way that, like, you should be a doctor, or you should be a lawyer, or you should be a mechanic, or you should be this or that. Never, because they were always so much into sports. And when they weren't playing or at practice was every night for football. They had, in the summertime, they had their 2-a-days, I think. And then, you know, after school and after practice, they were down in the basement lifting weights. So there was never like real. They weren't just hanging around being a pain in the butt. You know what I mean? They were doing something. I'm like, okay, hey, as long as they're down there lifting weights, I'm not going to get on them about getting a job or this or that or anything. Little did I know that would translate into them never having a job and doing non-traditional things. Mike pursuing the wrestling, Christopher pursuing the filmmaking, which was like so weird, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then Mark was. He played sports. He was in football. He was good. He was a tight end, I think, in high school. And then I remember him catching a touchdown pass at Franklin Roosevelt High School. And then he quit, and he went into boxing. And he was being trained by Kevin Rooney, who used to train Mike Tyson. Right. And Tyson had just dropped him, and he had this place in Catskill, New York, which is about 80 or 90 miles north of us. And every Friday and Saturday after school and Saturday morning, I'd take him up there. And Kevin Rooney was like, "This kid's got a right hand like a freight train." Yeah, good. And so he did that for a season, you know, a football season. And then he quit, and then he went back to football. But no matter what they were doing, the three of them were always, either the three of them or 2 out of 3, were always in the basement. And I think at the time that he got trapped is when they were in college. And that's why he was down there by himself. Home Alone. In the gym alone. No, that's another movie.
Yeah. No training partners.
Yeah. No training partners.
Well, when I took a year off when I was working on my undergraduate degree, and I say working on my undergraduate degree, I went to 5 schools undergrad. So like,
yeah, you went to like 3 of them, right? 3 or 4 schools.
Oh, yeah, I went to 2.
Oh, 2.
Yeah, I went to literally 5. So for one of them, it was just one class, but still, like, I still counted. But when I took that year off, I moved to San Francisco to live with my now wife. But my dad was convinced I was never going back to college. Like I'd never finished the degree or whatever. And then when my older son left United States for a girl when he had 15 units left to go on a degree, I thought, well, he's never going to finish that degree.
Right.
He's got another 2 semesters, I think, to get it where he had to completely start over. But you do get that sense that, okay, well, this is never going to happen. Like if they're giving up on it now, they're never going to get back to it.
Yeah.
And as a parent, it's scary. It's like, well, what are they going to do now?
So all 3 of them worked in weightlifting related businesses. I think they all worked for Mass Movement, setting up gyms for rich people and carrying equipment with John Cena.
The worst job ever.
And they always were trainers, you know, and sometimes they made some decent money and sometimes they didn't, you know. And it was all independent contractor type stuff, and it was you had to get a client and you had to collect from the client, you know, and that's what led to where they are now. It's just I can't take any credit for it. They found their own way, and I tell people all the time, lay off the kids, get off their back. Let them get out there and find their own way.
I've never really talked to my kids about college. It's just
let them find their own way.
If they want to go, then cool. If they don't.
In my case, in my case, I was kind of a C student in high school. I could have been better, but I didn't really care to. Didn't see the point in it. I wasn't going to compete with the brainiacs who were, you know, getting A's when they didn't even study and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of a waste of time. And as long as I was around the 70, 75 average, I was happy. I didn't care.
It's hard to figure out that line, you know, to, you know, as a parent, it's hard to figure out because you do need to make kids do some stuff that they don't want to do. And kids are going to make bad choices. You know, they're going to make really bad choices. If they have the choice between eating ice cream and eating dinner, they're just going to eat excess amounts of ice cream. You know, they don't always know what's best for them, but then to try to figure out your version of what's best for them is difficult with like sports and stuff. And I think with activity, I think we're trying to in some way teach fitness, right? And also just a team atmosphere. You know, this guy's going to be good at this thing and you're going to be good at that thing. And you got to learn how to win. You got to learn how to lose. I think the value of just learning that sometimes people are just better than you, I think is a really valuable lesson to learn. When you think you're fast and you're faster than 2 or 3 of your friends and then someone else blows by you, I think there's a good lesson in that. Like you either A, need to figure out a way to train harder, or B, just realize that you're not them and you might have to find your own thing that you're going to be good at. But as a parent, it's really difficult to figure out where do I push the kid and what do I lean him towards. And I know with Andy, her mom was really on her about college applications and helping her fill them out and making sure they were done correctly and make sure they spent a lot of time on them. And she ended up getting a scholarship, and that ended up being a big part of her life, you know, having free school. I mean, shit, it doesn't get any better than that, right? And so it's hard, you know. How do you define that line, you think?
Oh, okay, yeah, that line is pretty easily defined. I mean, for me, I was going to say this anyway. Going to college was, I could have got a job out of high school. I could have worked for my dad. I could have gone into that business. I had a lot of opportunities, and there were jobs available at that time. You could go to work. You know, my brother and I went to college, and he went through IBM with me, and he was always making the same money I made. While I was doing 4 years of college, he was getting 4 years worth of raises.
Experience.
So when I came out of college, I ended up making the same money as him, working at the same IBM facility, you know. And so it was kind of weird that it was a couple of years in between because I worked a couple other jobs first. But anyway, we ended up in the same place at the same time, which was really weird. And I realized that
By the way, for some of you that know, he's talking about my Uncle Jimmy, and he's the guy that tells me his workout every single time I see him. He does 45 minutes on the elliptical, 15 minutes of abs, and he's out the door. And then he's also the guy that leans forward in his oversized shirt and says, "Look, your shirt's falling right off me." And he just pulls his shirt away from his body. He's like, "Look at this." I never ask him about his workout, never ask him about his diet, but he feels really compelled and strongly to tell me about
tell
that.
You about it every time.
That hard, tough elliptical workout that he does 5:30 a.m. every morning.
So
he's a one-upper.
In my era, it was either get a job, go to college, or go to Vietnam. It was in full swing.
Yeah.
And Vietnam was off the table for me. My cousin had just been there and stepped on a mine and lost his leg at the knee.
Jeez.
And so that was off the table for me. And so I could have got a job, but I had the opportunity. My father said, "Listen, I'll pay for your first year, and then the rest of it's on you." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great." You know, it's like being in high school but not living home. It's really good, you know. So I went. And I actually did better in college than I did in high school because you can manage your own time. You can set your classes when you want them.
Yeah.
I'm not a morning person, so I had all my classes in the afternoons. I love that. Did my homework at night, slept, in the mornings and so on. And I had a job in a bar, a nightclub, actually, picking up bottles off the table before people hit each other over the head with them. So I had money.
That's
I had
a good plan right there.
I had my car there. I had all that kind of thing, and I was in the scene with all the people I wanted to be with. So it was good for me. But today, so then we got into the era, and so for me there was no choice, and for most kids back then, you either went you ended up in the service. If you had a job, you got drafted out of your job unless you had some kind of a deferment. So for me, it was an easy choice. But today, it's similarly an easy choice, but it's a choice that the parents make. They're like, "Oh yeah, well he's in 11th grade now, so he's started applying to colleges, and he's got to get into a good school, and da 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 da." And it's all this effort about you really got to do good in 11th grade because nobody looks at your grades in 10th grade. They look at your 11th grade grades to tell how good you're going to do in school, and that's how they base scholarships, and that's how they base where you're placed in the classes and so on, da da da, all that kind of thing. And I'll tell you, what the parents aren't looking at is the debt associated with it. We are so backwards. It's just, the food pyramid, how it's upside down. What is it? Bread's at the top and meat is at the bottom, and it should be the other way around. Education is the same way. You go for all of this education, and it's only like the last 2 years that you take your major. You're taking the English over again. You're taking the history and the American Revolution. And you're taking the algebra, 9th grade algebra. You're taking it over again in the first year of college. And then they force a language on you, and they give you, they broaden your horizons and all this crap. And nobody wants that. Nobody needs it. And you're paying tuition for all that. So the worst thing today, when the parents are making a decision, is, "Hey, son, you're going to college." What they're really saying is, "Hey, son, you're going to end up graduating from college with $80,000 worth of debt.
At least.
Because I can't pay for it, or I'm not going to pay for it because I have my retirement to look towards," right? Yeah. So one way or the other, the kid ends up with the debt. Here's a quick story. I won't mention a name. Mike had a friend, and this guy was a brain. He went to college to be a podiatrist, and he graduated after something like 12 years of college, school, and internships and all that kind of thing. He ended up with $230,000 worth of debt. Yeah. Okay, his first job was as an internist at a hospital in the Bronx, New York, and in a drug war zone. And this poor guy was getting calls at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning to come down and sew up knife wounds on drug addicts, And that's what he was doing. That was his internship, right? And he fell in love with a girl who was also a doctor doing an internship there, and she had $200,000 worth of debt. So put those two together, which happened. They got married. They start out their life with $430,000 worth of debt.
Yeah, that's a deep hole.
Now, Joe can't get a job that pays him any money because he has to work for a hospital, which, they keep their costs down. They're managed by a group of people who, are trying to keep the costs down. So he can either work for a hospital or he can go into private practice. Well, you can't go into private practice and start your own office because you can't rent a facility and have a receptionist and put on the whole and have the furniture and the office equipment and all that kind of thing that a podiatrist would need. So he has to work for another doctor. So now you're the doctor and I'm Joe. And they hire me at $50,000 a year. Well, that's my living expenses. I can't pay my debt, right? And the only reason you can pay me $50,000 a year is because when Mark comes in to see you and you say, oh, Mark, let me introduce you to Joe. He's the new guy from college. He's like, I didn't come to see him. I came to you because you have the experience.
Right.
I got a problem with my elbow or my foot.
Right.
I came to see you. I didn't come to see him. So this kid now is working in a job with no experience, and the doctor has to pawn off any of the people who don't insist on seeing him, right? So he's held down even longer. And he never has enough money to put in the bank to start his own practice, and he never has enough money to pay his debt. And so he's stuck, and now he's got a wife. She gets pregnant, and the motherhood hormones take over, and she doesn't want to work until the baby goes to school. So there's no income coming in over here to cover her $200,000 worth of debt. That's an extreme example, but take it back one level and have one kid graduating from a 4-year college with a $50,000 debt. You know, they don't have any credit. They've been going through school on your credit, basically. They have college loans to pay back. They haven't made any payments yet, and they need a car to get started. They want to buy they can't buy a car. The parents have to co-sign. You know, they have to pay the insurance. They're living in the parents' basement, or they're living in their old room again, which is very, humiliating to have a 4-year degree and to be living with your parents. And so we give them this title or whatever it is called millennials, where they're like lazy. And where's the incentive for them when they're graduating with this heavy load of debt on their back and they can't pay it? So we need to, just like the food pyramid, we need to revise that. They need to take the subjects they're interested in, like their doctor stuff, or their technical stuff up front, and get a 2-year degree in that. And then if they want a 4-year degree, go on. But get through in 2 years and be able to go out and get a job in the field being a doctor. You don't need all that other stuff. You know what I'm saying?
They need to back up the general education requirement for college into high school.
That's correct.
And then
it is there. But they
need to be able to, but they don't come out of it certified for that.
Exactly.
To be able to go on. They need that certification to happen in high school. I think we should kick out the last 2 years of high school period.
Right.
We should make that junior college and make it scheduled the way you're talking about, because as those kids get older,
and transferable.
Exactly.
At certain, like
why
a
wouldn't
C is only transferable to this college. A B is transferable at this level, and an A is transferable at the highest level, giving them an incentive to get that A.
Right, exactly. And we should also acknowledge somewhere in high school that not every kid is going to go to college, and that it is possible to get a trade job at the end of X number of years of training and apprenticeship, that kind of thing.
Right.
I don't understand why we don't do that. We used to do that. The system got so tilted toward college.
It's the old establishment.
Yeah.
Anytime you threaten the establishment or anytime you suggest any changes to establishment, you get the kind of reaction that Trump is getting, where everything he does and says is hated.
Inflammatory.
Yeah. They consider it, because it's not mainstream, to be crazy,
He's definitely controversial.
If I had, sometimes I say to him, hey, Mark, you know what? Good thing you never got that degree. He would have never thought of the slingshot.
Well, he wouldn't have been in a position to, I don't think.
Right. I mean, he may have, but that would have been a side thing.
But if you'd had a 9-to-5 job, then lifting would automatically have been
somewhere else
marginalized in your life.
No, I actually believe in just what I call dicking around. I think it's really important.
It is.
Like just
being a kid.
Yeah, being a kid, but also even as an adult, dicking around, just being by yourself and just being a little mindless here and there, and just along with working out, just having time to think outside of all the different stuff that you do. Because when you're doing the stuff that you're doing, you're thinking about that. You're trying to focus, and it causes a lot of distraction. You're with your wife, and you're with your kids, then you're with other family members, then you're with friends, then you're here, then you're there, and you don't have any time to think of anything, that's outside of any of that. So for me, having a little bit of time every day. I encourage people all the time, just take like an hour every day just to do something that's not just for yourself. For yourself would be, you know, working out or exercising or anything like that, but an hour just for personal development of some sort, whether you're looking at YouTube or reading something or just you need that time to yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be in the same trap. And, you know, people might look at what I've done and they might think, oh, he made it, but it's not making, like, you don't make it.
Well, you're not done.
No, you don't make it. I didn't run through any finish line,
right?
You know, and I certainly didn't receive any sort of trophy for that if I did make it through a finish line. But it's just the beginning, really. It's the beginning of more work and more problems and more stress, and I got to be able to handle all that shit. And the only way to handle it is to throw a lot of punches. You know, are you going to cower in the corner and have your hands up and let somebody just beat the shit out of you, or are you going to clench your fist as hard as you can and throw a few back? And so that's what ends up happening, and you have to have some time to yourself every day to be able to kind of battle through that. It doesn't matter where somebody is in their life, they have to fight through that stuff regardless.
I was listening to something with Mark Cuban the other day. I think it was How I Built This with Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how, like, he was successful, and then he was successful again, and then he was successful again, and he walked away or sold off those businesses along the way, but he was never done. He's still not done.
No. He's got more employees and more this and more that.
Now, he could stop. He could be done, but he has too much drive to be done. And
Important point.
For most entrepreneurs, you're not done because there isn't a point that you can just stop. I mean, if you sold out your business to somebody else, I think it would be very challenging because it is so much you and, and all of your interests. It's built around all that stuff. I think for him, maybe it was easier to sell off because they were
technology pieces.
Yeah, technology pieces and things like that. But for you, I mean, there isn't going to be a day where you go, okay, I'm done. I'm retired. I'm,
Yeah, and it's the same with anybody else, really. When it comes to making money or anything, you're not going to be like, oh, like, it'd be cool if next year if I made less. Like, that'd be great. Like, if I just, it's never a goal. Oh, it'd be great if I lifted less or if I was in worse shape. It'd be awesome if I was fatter next year rather than, like you just, that's not the way we work. You're always trying to figure out a way. How do I advance?
Right.
How do I get better? And that's the game is to consistently figure that out. Let's call Chris for a second.
Okay, here. Let's take a very quick pause so I get that stuff set up.
Anybody need a potty break?
Yeah, this would be a good time.
No.
All right, we got Papa Mike here on the old podcast. Sheldon.
Yeah, how you doing, Dad?
Good. Real good. How are you?
It's about time you made it on here. I've been waiting for you.
Yeah, I don't know what the holdup has been. I guess more important people. I know where I stand. I know where I stand now.
We had to spend 200 episodes getting warmed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Hey, you're coming up here, Chris, in a couple days, maybe?
Yeah, I think I'm going to come up there this weekend and see you guys for Father's Day. You're both fathers, and since I'm not, I got to come see you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
That'd be awesome.
So there's a party at Mark's house on the 17th.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Are you guys podcasting right now, or are we on the air, or are we just...
We're recording right now.
Yeah, you can't feel it?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Can't feel the positive vibes?
Yeah. What have you guys been talking about?
We just been talking about how handsome the entire Bell family is from the genetics that were passed down.
It's crazy. I actually had a couple questions for Dad that I think people would be, interested in.
Cool.
I wanted to ask him a little bit about Bigger, Stronger, Faster and his experiences with the film. And I guess first off, we'll start it off as like, when I approached you and told you I was going to do a film, what did you think it was going to be? And then when you saw what it was, were you shocked and surprised, and were you mad or angry or anything like that? Or did you just accept it and move on?
I don't think he's ever seen it. Not sure what film you're talking about.
I've only seen it like 200 times. I haven't made an opinion yet. No. Ever since you were in college and you were doing shorts and things like that, your work's always been good, so I was really excited about it and excited to see it. what I thought it was going to be is the same thing I think that you thought it was going to be, because when you presented to us, you were talking about interviewing all these sports people and that how they were going to come clean and how they were going to tell, I did use steroids, but they really work, and so on and so forth. And I don't consider myself a cheater because everybody else is doing it and things like that. And I thought it was going to be more of an expose than what it was. But it actually turned out better than that, I think, because you had a bunch of people in there who were saying that they had never done it, and then it came out later that they did. And then the ones who had done it, like Lyle Alzado, who supposedly died from steroids, it was proven that he didn't die from steroids. And the bad rap that was given to steroids from the George Bush administration and all that kind of thing, with the law that was passed to make criminals out of people who are just gym rats, didn't make any sense. And I think that the value in the film is all the things that came out, like the fact that our Air Force guys all have to be on amphetamines and things like that. It was just amazing. As far as we were in the kitchen and you said, well, I wonder what my parents would think if they knew that my brothers are on steroids right now. That kind of stuff never shocks me. It doesn't shock me when somebody tells me that their daughter in 10th grade is pregnant. It doesn't shock me when they say that their son who's in 9th grade got the 10th grade girl pregnant. Nothing shocks me anymore in life. And for a long time it hasn't, because I come to realize that life happens, and it happens to different people at different times. It happens to people that you don't expect it to. I mean, my pastor at New York in a church, his daughter, who was, the nicest person, was only married for a year before she got a divorce, and her and her boyfriend are both brought up in church to believe in marriage and everything like that. And they didn't even make it a year. It took a year for legal work. I mean, they were apart after like 6 months, and they had dated. Right? They had dated all through high school. It was crazy, So nothing shocks me anymore. And so the shock content of you guys being on steroids, it could have been you were on heroin. It could have been that you were smoking pot. It could have been that But remember all the experiences we had? Remember the time you and Mike wrecked the car down in Peekskill?
Oh, yeah. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Crashed it into a fence, and we were both hammered. Yeah,
they were both hammered. They went into a fence and took out 5 brand new. They went into a new dealer, a dealership.
I was a passenger. He did.
Mike wrecked the car. Chris was, I think when I got there, you were still hanging upside down in the seatbelt. We had to get you out of the car.
Really? I don't even remember.
No, I know. Yeah, the car was upside down, and you were hanging there upside down.
You guys believe in God, because I've had so many close calls like that.
But
thank God now that we're over past that.
But the part of that's funny now, it was our brand new Honda, and it was upside down on its roof, and you guys went through a chain link fence and took out 5 brand new Buicks, the front end of 5 brand new Buicks. Yeah, and so
at least we did some damage.
It's a pretty good score.
The phone call that I got, the first phone call in the morning that I got, that was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I had to run down there, and Mike had gone 2 or 3 blocks away to a residential home and pounded on the door to call the cops. And I actually got there before the cops got there. And so I'm on the scene when the cops arrive, and they're like, "What happened here?" And I'm like, "I don't have any idea what happened." And then Mike comes walking up, and he goes, "Yeah, I slid in the rain and hit the curb, and the car went over."
The amazing thing about Maddog is, like, he went to somebody's house to call the cops to be like, "Hey, I crashed my car," and he was hammered, and he doesn't even think about that, because he was always so honest, honest to a fault, they say.
Yeah.
And he was always like that, He'd be like, "Yeah, who cares?"
Yeah. So
I crashed it.
So the very first phone call in the morning, I thought it was going to be somebody saying, "Oh man, I heard about the accident with the boys. I'm so sorry, but I'm so glad that they're safe." That wasn't the call. The call was from the insurance company saying that we were dropped, and that I was going into the assigned risk pool. Not you guys.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that was major damage.
Screwing it up for your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then after, so going back to the movie.
Oh yeah.
He said nothing shocks you. Like when it actually came out and we were at Sundance. Well, first of all, tell us about Sundance. I think, that's a beautiful, beautiful memory for our family.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the between Sundance and the Tribeca Film Festival, to me, mean more than anything in my life. And I'm dying to get back there because of what it meant to our family. Because last time we were all together, really, like all really together as a unit. And, Maddog passed away, in the coming year after that. But that was kind of like the last, like, really good memory with Sundance and then Tribeca. So just tell us about like the festivals and going there and what you thought of it and how the film was received.
The film was received really well by everybody coming out of the theater, as we were out there, shaking our hands and stuff like that and telling us what a great film it was. The Q&As all went really well and were well received, and the questions were really good, and I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes on a lot of subjects and a lot of things regarding kind of career paths that you guys were taking. People would ask me, how'd you raise 3 such amazing sons and stuff like that? And I don't know that it was that I could take credit for it. It's just that you guys are kind of different.
You and Mom can take full credit. It's 100% due to your parenting. I'm truly believe that, I lived my life scared of getting in trouble. And that's, for me, when I got sober, that was the big thing. Is like, I felt like I was in trouble and I felt like I let you guys down. And I think Mike never really had that sense ever. Right. Of like, he never felt like he was in trouble, So, for Mark and I, though, that really worked,
Yeah. I can't say that much about it because you guys, we talked about it a little bit earlier. You guys never took on any real traditional employment. Did you ever have a job in high school?
I had a couple jobs. Remember, I worked at the gas station.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. I did a bunch of crap.
Yeah, but they weren't very long. It's like you never did anything like 2 summers in a row or anything like that. It was always jumping from here to there, right?
Yeah, it was always like whatever was available. I worked at a paintball place. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, the paintball place, yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. A lot of bouncing jobs, usually with Mike. Well, usually was the head of security somewhere, and you hire Mark and I.
The bouncing jobs, you guys all had that, yeah. But that was pretty much like after high school because you had to be at least 18 to do that, and you all graduated by then. Yeah, that was more like college jobs. But going back to the movie, we still get recognized today almost everywhere we go as, hey, you're the guys that were in Bigger, Stronger, Faster, right?
Just at Starbucks the other day, you and I together.
Yeah. Yeah,
tell your brother we love his movie.
I know. We never told you.
Thanks a lot. You don't want me to get a big head.
Yeah,
it's already too big. So when it came out, like, how did you feel about it? Were you proud of it? I know, like, one of the most interesting things about the whole movie and the whole experience was our closest relative, my Uncle Jimmy, who's my dad's BFF. My dad's younger brother, right? He's one down from me, right?
Yeah.
Next in line. So out of 9 kids, Jimmy was like right under my dad, and him and his wife Arlene, my Aunt Arlene, they went and saw the movie, and when they got out, they were like, "Christopher, we need to talk to you." And my Aunt Arlene took me aside and was like, "I would believe it from Michael, I would believe it from Mark, maybe, but not from you. You're like always the good kid." And it was like, I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, yeah. She's like, so she was like really disappointed that I tried it. I said, but I only tried it. They're still doing it, And she was like, I don't care. I couldn't believe that you tried it, but I wanted to let you know that I love you and we're really proud of you. And this is awesome. So,
that's what they got out of the movie. That's awesome.
She probably said that same thing to them.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think everybody had a fear of how it was going to come out. Andy, Mark's wife, was very fearful of what could possibly happen, if this came out. And, I think, like, looking back on it, I'm so proud of it. And I'm so proud of Mark, and I'm so proud of Mike and my parents, you guys, because I think it came out awesome. I think it just changed the game, about people talking about this subject matter. And it's like, if I was going to be the sacrificial lamb for that, then that would have been okay too. But it didn't happen that way. I mean, people really, really love the movie and have really been supportive of the message, and it's still out there going. I still, I met somebody today in the gym who's out here from Toledo, and he said one of the reasons he wanted to come to Gold's was to meet me. So that was pretty cool.
Awesome.
Happens all the time. So eventually we'll be able to turn that into money.
It's it's the pumping iron of its time, I think,
Okay.
I think pumping iron will always be out there, and I think Bigger, Stronger, Faster will always be out there.
It's too bad that there isn't like a special edition, however, that catches up to a particular, like every 5 years, a new special edition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no reason why we can't.
We're coming
do
up on the
another one.
10th year anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 films that will be coming up that are really in the wheelhouse of Bigger, Stronger, Faster. So I don't really want to talk too much about them yet, but I'm really excited about that because health and fitness has been my passion. And for years, I really got away from it with the drugs and alcohol. And I'm back now, like just really back with my diet and focused on training and, all this stuff that made us the Bell Brothers. We're coming back. And,
Dad, what did you think when Chris was going through his problems? Where you're like, oh, fuck. You said earlier that nothing really surprised you, but tough thing to go through after losing one son to that battle.
Yeah, that was scary. That was I was like, oh man, when a person gets to this point, usually it's kind of like
it's rare
the beginning
for someone to come back.
It's the beginning of the end, you know. And I mean, like I tell you, I was in the jail ministry at church in Woodland there, going to the jails and trying to talk to the guys there. To say that, if you don't have any love for yourself or you don't have any self-respect and you're doing drugs and alcohol and this and that and putting yourself down all the time, there's got to be a mom, a dad, a grandmother, a grandfather, an aunt, an uncle, a wife, a girlfriend. There's somebody out there that loves you, and you got to stop doing this to yourself.
Yeah, someone cares, right?
Someone cares about you. There's nobody here. I mean, because let's face it, when you were born and you were a baby, somebody changed your diaper. They might have hated you, but all of us, someone changed our diaper and cleaned up our messes and cleaned up our puke. Whether you were in the best family or the worst family, or whether you were in foster care or whatever, somebody took care. You're still not wearing that mess, right? So somebody took care of you. So somebody out, think about it. Somebody out there loves you, and somebody out there cares about you, and you got to tap into that person, and not to use them, but to try to motivate yourself to do something not for them but for yourself, so that they can continue to have a relationship with you. And so when that happened to you, I might have even told you that, I'm not sure, but anyway, when that happened to you, I wasn't sure, but I can tell you this, like, going through anything the second time is always easier than the first time. And you talk to people who've been in battle, who've been in war, okay? They always say that pulling the trigger and shooting the first person, the first human life that you take, that is really hard, okay? But then the next one is easy, the next one's easier, and then it's a way of life. You're out there, you're shooting anything that moves, and you don't care. Taking the first life is the first really tough experience to get over. Like I said before, missing your first mortgage payment is so tough. But after you realize there's really not much consequence to it, it's easy to miss them. Missing your first car payment, all those, anything that you do is scary for the first time. The first fight you've ever been in. But if you're in a fight, if you're a bouncer or something like that, and you have to throw somebody out, the first fight you get into, the first confrontation you get into, whatever it is, the first time you don't hand your homework in, you're so scared, but the consequence isn't worth all the fear that you had in the beginning. The consequence is the teacher says, well, you're going to have to make that up. And so, big deal.
I think it's a fair thing to point out that Maddog had a history of problems before that, and Chris hasn't, and it's because they're brothers and because they both had substance abuse addiction problems. You tend to think of them as being the same thing, but they're really not the same thing.
Right? Yeah, I had more faith and more hope of you coming out of it. Plus, you were in a great facility compared to
also,
he got mediocre type treatment compared to the Cadillac treatment you got.
Yeah.
But you didn't have a history of nonsensical self-abuse type things, going on. And you were more mellow. Your whole attitude about life was more mellow,
Yeah, Mike, he always had like a temper, where he'd be super nice and then he would fly off the handle, and go back and forth like that a lot. And I think that contributes a lot to like him, the way that he felt inside a lot. He felt like trapped, and he felt. I used to feel so bad talking to him sometimes when he just would always, he'd feel lost a lot, and I never knew how to help that. But I think, one thing that was really interesting to me was to see how much worse it got when he started getting treatment for with antidepressants and stuff like that. I think all that stuff just, compounded, made it worse. And, I think that happens a lot. And I think that, people need to be aware of that those psych meds are, can be very dangerous and really change somebody's personality a lot,
Yeah, his whole attitude about life in general, his statement that I'd rather be dead than average. I don't know anyone who's ever said anything close to that. Yeah. I'd rather be dead. So many people are so happy to be average. I'm an average American. I'm an average dad. I have an average home in an average neighborhood. It's not a crime neighborhood. It's not a luxury neighborhood. It's an average neighborhood. Everything is average. And average was never good enough for him. And the only thing that you can choose if you're not going to be average is below average or superior. Mm-hmm. And there was no way he was going below average. He needed to be superior. He even said it in the movie when we were sitting by the poolside there. He said, I thought I was over that, the adoration of the crowd and all that kind of thing. He goes, but I guess I'm not, And so he had this internal drive to be great, and he admits it to himself and to the camera that he was his own worst enemy in that. No one was stopping him from doing that but himself. Yeah. That's got to be a big conflict.
What I always love about talking to people about the movie is how much they care about Mike. So many people can relate to him. So many people aren't getting to where they want to go, and they're stuck and they're frustrated. And I think that, that's the one thing that I always love when, people talk about the movie and then they bring up Mike because he's not here anymore. So it's just nice to hear about him still, and sort of keep him in our memories through the movie, because I hear about him all the time. People say, you know what, I can totally relate to your older brother. More people can relate to him even than relate to a story like mine or Mark's, which is really, interesting. It seems like that's the person people like Lance Armstrong. When I went to talk to Lance Armstrong, he was just obsessed with what happened with Maddog. He was fascinated by it. I think that's really cool that people, they care and they see that in their own situations and they want to talk about it. So I think it gets people talking, and it's good. I
think a lot of people are tormented by trying to figure out how to be great. And I think that they don't have a definition of their own for being great, because it's going to mean something so different to each person. But what I've recognized in people that I admire and people that I think are great is, I think my dad's great, but he's not held up on a pedestal because he doesn't have an Instagram account where he's doing this and that or whatever, right? But what's great about waking up at 5 a.m.? There's nothing great about it, especially if you only do it once. Yeah. But if you wake up at 5 a.m. and you chip away at whatever it is that you love or whatever it is that you do, whether you're a doctor, lawyer, or you're somebody that's out there that's following their passion, or you're an entrepreneur or whatever it is, over a long period of time, being good and making the correct decisions will turn into greatness. Somebody else will be the one that tells you, and be like, what you do is fucking great. They're going to say it to you, and you're going to go, cool. All right, man. Yeah. And you don't stop with that. You're like, all right, game over. I'm great. That's cool. I got the pat on the back I was looking for. I think that people think that they have to do something extraordinary to be great. And there's very, very few people in this world that can do anything that's extraordinary. And that's a Michael Jordan or Muhammad Ali. Those are people that can revolutionize their sport or can change the game, or Muhammad Ali even just changing things for millions of people, period, outside of the sport itself.
Right. Mike this might sound strange coming from me because I was father, but Mike is in the right place for Mike, because if you come out with a statement that I'd rather be dead than average, and you're never any more than average, you can't live with yourself. Yeah. He couldn't live with himself. After his last rejection from WWE, and I'm not blaming WWE at all for anything. Right. I know what they're after. They're after the biggest and the best looking, and he was never really cut, and he wasn't really tall enough. He wasn't real WWE material. There were guys that were smaller than him in it, but for some reason he didn't.
Probably one of the best psychological wrestlers out there, but like that's not what they look for. Like he was so good at actually wrestling, but that's not what they care about.
I know. So
it sucks.
So for him, to come out with a statement like that, and he wasn't just saying it; he meant it. I'd rather be dead than average. And if he were alive today to make me happy or to make his mother happy, I think he'd be miserable inside, and he'd be miserable with himself. And I just believe that. There's no guarantees when you have a kid. You get a car, you want a warranty. You have a new roof put on your house, you want a 25-year warranty, and it doesn't even matter whether the company goes out of business 10 years from now, you still want that 25-year warranty. Or you want an instruction manual on how to run your computer, or you want this, or you want that. You have a kid and there's nothing. You don't get an instruction manual.
Nothing.
You don't get a guarantee. You don't get anything. And people say, oh, a parent should never have to bury a child, That's emotional. They're emotional because parents bury children all the time in childbirth, as we talked about earlier, the complications that can happen in childbirth, to the child going off to war and fighting for his country and coming back in a box. It happens all the time. It happens every day. And I'm not talking about it like I'm happy about it, but it's just one of those things that happens. And Mike... wasn't determined to die. He was determined to be great. And when all of his options were off the table, he didn't have the ability to reinvent himself in some other area to attain greatness. His greatness was always sports oriented and crowd pleasing type, adoration, that kind of thing.
And it's so hard to figure out because even the people that do get there, we just saw Chris Cornell committed suicide, one of the most talented vocalists in history, that's lead singer of Soundgarden, a great guy, and committed suicide. He had everything going for him. Everything was coming back. They were back on tour, and same with like all these other guys that have committed suicide. Like they have the world, but they're still depressed, and depression is just such a hard thing to figure out.
Look at Robin Williams. Who can figure out Robin Williams?
Yeah. Oh, he had Lewy body dementia. He had a diagnosis. There was a diagnosis. He didn't know what it was. He just knew that he was losing control of himself. And
wow, that's a shame.
What he did is pretty common. And he didn't. I think instinctively he knew he was never going to get any better. He was just getting worse, and he was becoming more miserable. I don't think it was driven by like the depression that he experienced earlier in his life or any of that stuff. He just reached a point where he couldn't live with himself anymore because he was so uncomfortable with what was happening with his body. And it wasn't until afterwards when they did all the autopsy and all the tests and things that were done leading up to that they were able to make that diagnosis. And he made totally the right call. That's a terrible way to die.
Yeah.
It's just an awful way to go.
My nephew, Hamish, who has a funny way of saying things, I think he's 4. We were talking the other day, and I mentioned something that my brother did, and I think I was talking about you, Chris. I don't remember what we were talking about. I was out on a golf course with them, just kind of messing around and kicking balls and stuff and throwing them around and stuff, and we were just kind of killing time while we were eating at this restaurant because the kids were bored and they were super restless, so I took them all outside and we were hanging out. And I said something that you did, and I can't remember what it was, but he goes, is that your alive brother or your dead brother? And I said, I'm talking about my alive brother. And then Lachlan comes over and he goes, Hamish. He's like, we're not supposed to talk about his dead brother. And then Lachlan's like, he's like, shut up. He's like, I was trying to find out which brother he's talking about, and they were like yelling at each other back and forth about it.
Oh my God, that's the best.
But I think they felt bad about it, and I said, you know what, it's totally fine. I actually explained what happened, and I said that he was bipolar, and that's always an important thing to point out to people that are trying to help people, is that if they're bipolar, then the struggle is going to be a lot more intense. It's going to be a lot harder, and you may not ever be able to reel them back in. And then also I just explained to them that things that are overdone can can hurt you, whether it's alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or why not talk to them like they're adults? Why not? He's 4, and the other kid's like 7. They don't need to know everything all the time about adult activity, right? But why not make them aware when they're young, and now they're going to say, fuck, that's a very real thing. When they're presented with marijuana, they're going to be like, you know what? My uncle died from some sort of drug. I don't know what it was or what he did exactly, but just the whole drug thing is not great doesn't seem like a great option for me.
Well,
the kids are aware of it. Yeah.
Awareness.
You can't wait until they're in 8th grade or high school or whatever to start explaining
they
this
already
stuff.
know a lot.
Sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that stuff.
Yeah.
This weekend I was up in British Columbia and I was with my friend who's Greek, and he's 100% Greek, and from he came over here from Greece, and he has his kids with him, and his kids were drinking wine, and like they say, we grew up with wine, and like because they always have it, the kids never crave it. They're like 13, 15, they drink wine. The kid's like, I like white wine, and the 13-year-old's like, I like the red wine, and they're like arguing over it, and it's like so weird to see that, and he's like, oh yeah, there's no alcoholism in my family or anything like that. I've drank since I was 3. So, and so it's just interesting how we decided to do it here in America. It's actually been detrimental to a lot of people,
Yeah.
And here's
because we hide things. I'm not saying that it's okay for a kid to drink wine or anything, but saying like the idea of that like is a little bit more open-minded that might help kids not get addicted in the future because they're aware of it.
Yeah, they say that if you make it less of a big deal, then you take away that rebellion component of it. Like, oh, I'm going to do that. I was always told not to do this, so I'm going to do this now, and you can see I'm rebelling. It's like if you make it a no big deal, then that's one.
Yeah, like, I don't care. Yeah, exactly.
So another way to think about this whole thing is, Mike and John Cena were tag team partners at one time. And John Cena is right where he belongs today. And if you believe in God and you believe in things like that, destiny and so on, and that God's in control of things, John Cena's right where he belongs. Out of the 7 billion people on the planet, John Cena's right where he belongs. And that's how I kind of come to the conclusion for myself. My wife doesn't agree with me on it, but for myself, the conclusion is that Mike is where he belongs. He did what he was put here to. He did what he was meant to do, and he was put here to do. He went all out in everything he did, trying to do what he did. And for some reason, his time here was over. And
sorry, I'm not sure what you said.
That's
Siri,
my computer.
Siri chiming in.
We're pretty sure what you said.
Anyway, Boar, we're gonna drop you out of here.
Drop me out of here. It was great talking.
Team.
Good talking to you, Chris.
See you this weekend.
See you Saturday.
Okay.
Thanks, Boar.
You got it.
Bye.
Later.
There we go. That was our first podcast call-in there.
Exactly.
Or at least our first in modern. Well, we had Stone Cold call-in via like speakerphone.
Yeah, that was speakerphone.
Which wasn't so great, but it was great because it was Stone Cold. Dad, kind of finishing up here. Having a son die and having some other things, spending 70 days in the hospital with maybe 8 or 10 different surgeries or whatever the hell it was. You've always been a man of faith, or at least for a very long time. How have you kept that faith? Because sometimes we ask people sometimes on the podcast. People that have had, some tragedies in their life, and we ask them about religion. Sometimes they're like, nope, and other times they say yes. So, what has been something for you that has kept you connected to God?
Well, actually, if you look at all the treaties we've had over the years with all the different countries, you look at all the different ideologies that are out there, you look at all the different governments that are out there and the things that control people's lives. The only thing that I find to be consistently true through time is the words in the Bible. In the Old Testament, it was like God was kind of a hammer. If people didn't do the right thing, he came down on them. And then Jesus came and changed that to mercy, and that you have forgiveness. And so I find that a lot of the scriptures regarding life and how you run your life, have held true over the years. So it's not something that you believe in and then jump off the train as soon as something goes wrong. It's something that you believe in, and you dig your heels in and say, I'm not moving from here, because it's the only thing that's been true over the years. And we all get inspiration from different places. That's the first place. And then you have all the great people in the world who have said great things. Like Henry Ford said that people spend more time working their way around problems than solving the problem.
That's a pretty good one.
And every time I come across an inspirational quote, I always send it to Mark. And a lot of times he'll send me inspirational quotes, or I'll hear things that are inspiring from him on his content that he puts out on YouTube and podcasts and stuff like that. And all the people that you guys have on the podcast are somebody every one of them is somebody who's influencing a group of people, sometimes a bigger group, sometimes a smaller group, but they all have a following. And all of those people have great quotes on this program because they have a great philosophy of life, and that's whether they believe in God or not. They have a drive, they have a specific thing, they have a specific purpose, and everybody was put here on the earth for a specific purpose. The people who aren't put here for a specific purpose have never been born. The ones who were born, the specific purpose might have been to fight in the Civil War, and die. The specific purpose might have been to fight in the Civil War and become president. There's both ends of the spectrum there. But I find that the Bible and the Gospels are very inspirational. And, we have all the Paris agreement for climate control and all these things. And these things are usually filled with a bunch of garbage and stupid rules where America's going to tighten up on their emissions, but China isn't going to until 2030. So why did anybody ever bother to sign that anyway, But the things that people come up with, like Einstein and the great scientists and the great innovators in our lifetime. Look at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was not a very nice person, but Steve Jobs changed every single industry with the phone. Malls are going out of business because people order from Amazon online, and Amazon couldn't exist without Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs' iPhone wouldn't be any good. They're complementary, and they're changing the world. And a lot of these brick and mortar stores are going out of business because people don't want to bother going there. They just want to order stuff online and get it. The phone will take your pulse. It'll take your temperature. It'll tell you, it'll keep your schedule for you. It'll you can find a manufacturer for your slingshot in Pakistan on it. I mean, what can't you do on it? It changed the whole music industry. Songs are all 99 cents now instead of you have to go out and buy the whole album just to get the one song you wanted. Right. You know what I'm saying? So the great innovators of our time have changed things, and they continue to change things. And my inspiration comes from people like that, like Elon Musk. I mean, the things that he's doing with the car and with SpaceX. With
space,
I mean, give me a break.
Hyperloop.
Yeah, all these things.
Solar shingles.
Doesn't even make sense.
Amazing stuff. And everybody has a purpose. There's the people who came to save the planet for like the wrong reasons, and there's also the right reasons. I mean, I think it's okay to have coal burning plants, and I think it's okay to have solar powered plants. I think there's room for everybody and for everything,
My dad was in a really bad situation. How many years ago? 3?
It was what, the hospital?
Yeah.
It was 2011,
it's been a while. It's before the podcast. I count time from September 2013.
2011, I had some kind of infection in my system, and I went to a hospital in New York called
it was Queens.
Jamaica Hospital, and they did a number on me there, and I ended up with peritonitis and sepsis, and they had cut out like a lot of my small intestine to try to fix things, and my intestine kept leaking, and it kept getting infected, and so they had to transfer me to Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan. and I found a doctor there who practically did a miracle by mounting my intestines on the outside of my body so he could observe the healing and then put them back inside after so many days. It was just, there's a guy right there. There's an innovator.
Right.
Dr. Dimitri Alden of Poughkeepsie, New York, came down to New York City and did this operation and told me, I need you to sign this paper, but it holds me completely harmless because I'm doing something that's never been done before, but I think it's the only way I could possibly save your life, and no one would ever approve it. But you're in a position where you're not going to make it, so you might as well approve it. So I signed it figuring, okay, I'm done.
I want to say it took guts, but that seems like a softball.
Pardon the pun. No, pardon the pun. Pardon the pun. Guts. So anyway, it was an amazing operation. I had 35 days going downhill and then 35 days recovering from the surgery that he did to save my life.
You got down to like 160 pounds or something?
I went in at 229 pounds I went into the hospital at, and I came out at 135. And I've slowly worked my way back up to 229. And I never really changed my eating habits, just that I wasn't absorbing as much because I took out so much small intestine. Right. But now I'm at the point where I think I've absorbed it all. I got to try it. In fact, I'm going to start again today on the keto diet. I started on it and I lost 9 pounds and I was so happy. But I asked him one day, how you doing? He said he lost 40. And I'm like, we started like on the same day. I'm like, you lost 40. I lost like 9. And so I said, I'm going to go out and have a hamburger on a bun. And I got off of it, and I've been eating pancakes and junk since then. So even just had a donut, but that's it. I'm going to start with lunch or whatever. I'm going to start. I'm going to try the keto diet again. Yeah.
When you were, kind of at your worst, I visited you. I think I visited you twice, or maybe 3 times. I have a hard time remembering. I know that you were very much up and down, and I know that when Chris visited you, for some reason, you were like doing totally fine, and he was like, "Oh, everything seems fine." And I'm like, "No, you didn't see like how bad it was really getting." But anyway, there was a point there where I don't know how much you remember of any of that time, but I basically said, you taught me everything I need to know, and if you need to pass on, like, I'm comfortable. Mm-hmm. You've been a great dad to me, and I know how to be a man, and I feel like I can handle myself. And if you need to rest, then go ahead. Do you remember that at all?
I do, yeah. I remember that, and I also remember that I didn't remember that Mike died. Because I'm like, I said to my wife, gee, this is so weird. Chris and Mark have been here, but Mike, he's usually the first one when there's a family emergency. Where's he? And she was like, oh. And then I she said, don't you remember he died? And I'm like, yeah. And she started telling me about, right after Bigger, Stronger, Faster was made, and we went from that January at Sundance to that December where we got the phone call that he was gone. And then I remembered it all came back. Like, it wasn't like a shock to me or anything like that. It's just that it was back there someplace, but it wasn't, connected.
Yeah, we were just thinking, these people are visiting me. Like, where's he at?
Where's he at?
All right, Dad. Well, everybody that had a chance to listen to this, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, everybody.
Awesome having you on the show today. Jim got to talk about his pops a little bit. I know that Jim's dad has been a huge inspiration to him, and it's been a lot of fun, being around Jim as long as I have, and having him be not just part of the gym and not just part of super training and slingshot and everything, but part of the family. So this is really cool to have this culmination of all of us coming together here on the podcast today.
All right. Happy Father's Day, everyone.
Happy Father's Day.
Multiply your hustle, multiply your muscle, and may all your shits be tapered. I'm at Mark Smelly Bell on Instagram and Twitter. Catch y'all later.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Shout out to our sponsors, 8Man Apparel, for people who lift heavy weights at 8manstrong.com. Complex Muscle Stim products at complexusa.com. Use the code PowerCast and get an additional 28% off. HowMuchYouBench.net, home of Mark Bell's Slingshot. Power Magazine, the world's only strength magazine, available in both digital and print at thepowermagazine.com. Bodybuilding.com for all your fitness and supplement needs. And because it's Father's Day, Movement Watches, go to mvmt.com/powercast for 15% off of all your purchases, plus free shipping and returns. And just print that sucker out and give it to Dad for Father's Day. I know he'll appreciate it. We'll be back.